So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Florence School of Regulation debate. How can artificial intelligence help achieve EU's energy goals? Artificial intelligence definitely is at the center of everybody's attention. Today I read that Il Folio is the first newspaper that published completely content based on artificial intelligence. Journalists just ask the questions, and then artificial intelligence just print whatever it thinks. It shows what the immense scale of change is bringing artificial intelligence. But in energy sector, it's definitely more complicated. There are a lot of startups, a lot of things are happening, but because of the conservative nature of the sector, it is slightly different. And today's debate, we will try really to much focus what could be done really to capitalize in achieving EU's energy goals, that is competitiveness, bringing down the prices and costs of investment, also security of supply, and issues related to the decarbonization. So there are a lot of aspects, and we will not answer all, but at least will try to go on it. We will start debate by Ivar Ijaps. He is member of European Parliament. He is member of Committee of Industry, Research and Energy. It's ITRE committee, and he has followed artificial intelligence debate in the EU from the beginning on. Then we will go to concrete cases. We will start with a case presented by Carla Gonçalves. She is postdoctoral researcher at the Center for Power and Energy Systems in INESC-TEC, this private non-profit research association. In English, it will be Institute for Systems, Computer Engineering, Technology and Science. Then we will come already with those issues that will bring closer to the debate, presenting by Luis Cunha. He is Director of European Policies and Project at IREDES, the mainland DSO in Portugal, but he is also Chairman of European Technology and Innovation Platform for Smart Networks for Energy Transition. So that demonstrates that we are doing things. And the panel debate will be led by my colleague, Professor Christopher Jones. We will have Vincent Beruto, Head of Unit for Innovation Research, Digitalization and Competition from European Commission DG Ener, JC Scott, a Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation in New Delhi, India, and very welcome from participation from India. And she is also faculty member at Hertie School. We have Francois Baud, strategy lead at ACER, Agency for Cooperation of Energy Regulators, and George Vasconcelos. He is also professor at Florence School of Regulation, chairman of NUES, New Energy Solutions, a company acting in the field of renewable energy and energy efficiency. And with this, it's all from me. Ivar, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Andres. This is really a great honor and pleasure to be with you this morning. Also because looking at the institutions being represented, we really see a very high level mix on both policy making on the one side and also technology, which is, of course, the point where our topic, namely AI in energy, is very relevant. And looking from the perspective of the European Parliament, the AI itself in general during these last years has been very topical, as you all know, with the adoption of the European AI Act a few years ago. But at the same time, this is, let's say, the responsible AI part. On the other hand, we have to think also how to incentivize the use and uptake of different kinds of AI technologies in order to achieve our goals, which are primarily, of course, the goal of security and also, of course, the goal of climate change. My own role in this process has been being a rapporteur for the Digital Decade legislation of the European Union, which is, as you might know, just a soft law. But at the same time, it really states that up until the year 2030, 75% of European enterprises should be using either cloud AI or big data. We all know that this is a huge challenge because we are in many ways lagging behind when compared with our American and Chinese counterparts. And this is, of course, where we, taking into account that climate change is still the main policy of the European Union, we should be more active just to encourage the uptake. And that's why I think that we are all expecting some kind of a good result coming out from that apply AI strategy of the European Union, which is right now on the table. And let's see what happens, because, well, we have been regulating many things at the same time in order to get more innovation, in order to get more new technologies being developed in the EU. I think that we need a parallel track just to promote, especially in climate change. And if you look at the whole spectrum, which is most probably going to be covered by experts and policymakers in this field, where the AI could be useful when dealing with climate change, we all know that there is really a huge potential. The first one is accidentally also linked with what's happening right now in the European Parliament, and this is grids. The issue of electric grids. The European Parliament is right now working on the INI, on the own initiative report on the grids, and this is a smart grids is a huge thing in terms of predicting demand, predicting supply, and adjusting the system accordingly. We all know that this is a very smart thing, which on the one hand, of course, needs interconnectors just to complete the European single market for energy. On the other hand, of course, what we need is also AI and new technologies, how to deal with that. Another thing is, of course, the renewables. How do we make solar and wind, for example, more efficient by using AI, for example, which might sound as a sci-fi for many, but for example, forecasting weather patterns and optimizing energy production accordingly, which is, I think, taking into account that the solar and wind are getting increasingly accessible for everyone. For example, my own home country, Latvia, is also working very actively on that. We need really technologies to balance that smartly. Of course, also issues like, well, our everyday lives in terms of energy efficiency. Because, well, there are already many applications. How do we develop those AI-powered smart systems in adjusting heating, cooling, lighting in real time, and in that sense, just to reduce energy waste? Which is a huge thing for everyone. And this is where the AI could come in and is coming in. And of course, the policymakers' task is to promote this. And well, also in terms of, well, one of the main things right now, I was coming from a IMCO, the Internal Markets Committee meeting on end-of-life vehicles, meaning the old cars. How do we treat them when they are not drivable anymore? Circularity. Circularity is also one of the issues where we expect, well, new developments coming in order to achieve new targets and new goals in terms of the so-called predictive maintenance. How do we, well, apply certain maintenance strategies predictively without waiting that this or that device or appliance just breaks down? How do we predictively well, repair them and maintain them in order to keep them running? Because this is, if you want, the circular economy, and repair and use are coming back everywhere, especially, I think, also in the energy sector. And also, well, the big things that are already being developed in terms of energy trading and demand forecasting. We all know that the finance sector is extensively using already now AI applications in order to predict the market, in order to predict the demand and supply and the price. And this is, I think, where there is also a huge potential for the AI to come in. And let me finish with that. These technologies, we are pretty well following them from the European Parliament, especially taking into account that very few of us are experts. I'm not no expert in energy. But at the same time, of course, our main task from, if you want, the positively liberal free market side is how do we promote those technologies, because right now, as you all know, the simplification is a huge thing. How do we make our companies especially in the energy field, but also in the AI, how do we make them more competitive? Because we have been lagging behind. And of course, in that sense, by leveraging AI, we can accelerate the transition to clean energy, reduce waste, and make our energy systems more reliable and sustainable. And in that sense, I hope and I think that AI is truly a game changer in that fight against climate change. Thank you very much. And I wish you all a very productive and interesting seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivars. It's much appreciated. Could I have a very short sentence question to you? In your house, in the European Parliament, what are the perceptions regarding artificial intelligence? You would say majority sees opportunities or majority sees the threats. How it inside the house the perception of artificial intelligence?
You know, this is a very fair question because the previous mandate, the one which accepted the AI Act, was much more on the threat side. I think that this one could be a little bit more positive because there is also, if you look at the European growth rates, and if you look at the European energy prices, which have been mentioned by Letta, by Draghi as one of the obstacles for our economic development, I think that this convocation of the European Parliament might be a little more reasonable in that sense. Thank you.
Let's hope that you will convince your colleagues. And that means that we could move already to very concrete development. Carla, the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me for this event. Let me just start by sharing the screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thank you. So good morning all. My name is Carla Gonçalves, and I am a researcher at Inestec. And during the next minutes, I will talk about the data market pilot for collaborative forecasting, short-term forecasting of offshore wind energy. So first, let's look at how offshore wind energy supports the Europeans' climate goals. The EU aims to cut greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030 and become climate neutral by 2015. And these are ambitious goals, and offshore wind is essential to reaching them. And as of 2023, offshore wind capacity stood at nearly 20 gigawatts, and the target for 2030 is to triple that to 60 gigawatts and reach a massive 300 gigawatts by 2015. So offshore wind is not just part of the plan, it's a pillar of Europeans' clean energy future. And but while offshore wind is a pillar, it also brings serious challenges because the big issue is variability. Offshore wind is really hard to predict. We have here an example of the production, and we see that it is really, really variable. And that's why we need robust forecasting models to accurately predict how much power turbines will generate. And when forecasts are wrong, it leads to financial losses, grid instability, and high maintenance risks. So improving forecast accuracy is really a critical aspect. And when we talk about day-ahead power forecasting, we mainly rely on weather forecasts. And there are two main ways to turn weather data into power data. First, we have the physical models. These models use complex equation systems to simulate the atmosphere and then produce weather forecasts on a large grid. But then we need to adjust these forecasts for the large grid to the locations where we have the turbines, and then we can convert the wind speed forecasts into power output using the manufacturer power curves. But this process is not always accurate because we need to do this extrapolation for the specific location of the turbines, and there are many extrapolation errors, especially in extreme weather conditions that are the most challenging conditions when we are predicting wind power. The second approach are the artificial intelligence models. These models learn from historical data. They can handle complex patterns more effectively than the physical models, and sometimes they can even find hidden relationships that physical models miss. But it seems perfect, but AI also has its challenges. It needs lots of quality data to train, and different models may capture different dynamics. The good news is we live in a world with huge amounts of data being generated and collected, including in power systems. And we know that from past experiences, we know that if we combine data from multiple sources, this leads to better forecasts. For example, if we combine data from different locations, this helps models to capture weather patterns across space and time, because wind have some spatial temporal patterns, and the models can capture it if we fed the artificial intelligence models with data from multiple locations. We can also combine, so instead of combining data from multiple sources, multiple locations, we can also combine forecasts from different models. This is what we call ensemble forecasting, and collections usually auto-performs individual forecasts because forecasts are the models are different. The data they use can also be different, so they capture different dynamics, as I said in the previous slide. So if we take an ensemble of them, we are able to, the collection is able to auto-perform the individual forecasts. So it seems perfect, but what's the problem? Well, data and knowledge or models are often owned by different companies or individuals who are reluctant to share these data or knowledge on models unless there are clear incentives to do that. And that's why we have been developing algorithms to monetize data. In this presentation, I will focus on data markets for ensemble forecasting and why. The ELIA group, so ELIA is the system operator from Belgium, the Belgium system operator. So ELIA group saw some of our work on data sharing and reached to us. They wanted to explore a collaborative forecasting platform to improve day-ahead offshore wind forecasts using these ensemble techniques. The idea is simple. So we combine forecasts made by different parties. Good forecasts get rewarded. Ensemble forecasts adapt dynamically, and then they should perform better. And the idea is also to have this level play field where small and large players, companies or individuals, compete equally. So they all do their forecasts, and if they are good, they get rewarded for that. So it's a new way to think about forecasting. We have a collaborative, dynamic, and fair way to do these forecasts. So let's see a brief overview of how the data market pilot works. This one. So we have the market maker. So to present you the identities, we have the market maker, which is an entity that owns resources, for instance, wind farms, and seeks forecasts by opening and funding collaborative forecasting market sessions. In this case, Elia is the market maker. It's the only buyer of collaborative forecasting that we have in our platform. And we also have the forecasters that can be individuals or organizations registered in the platform, and they aim to submit forecasts to open collaborative forecasting challenges and receive some compensation back. So in this pilot, the forecaster registration is limited to invitation only. So Elia has to invite forecasters for them to be able to join the platform. Then in a general way, we open market sessions. The market sessions can be open, so market maker can open multiple challenges. They can be wind power forecasts for different locations. Then the forecasts submit their predictions, their forecasts for these different challenges. The market does the ensemble forecasting. It can be a simple average or something more robust, an artificial intelligence model. And then later it evaluates the performance of these ensemble forecasters and see how much each forecaster contributed to this performance. And then the market maker attributes incentives to the forecasters according to their relevance, to their contribution to this ensemble. So going more specifically to the case we have with Elia, so we have the forecasters, the multiple forecasters invited by Elia, as I said. We have the market makers, so they open the session, and here what we do is day ahead forecast. So until today at 12, they have to submit forecasts for tomorrow with a resolution of 15 minutes. So they send us to the platform their forecasts for wind power. Just to say that Elia has an installed capacity of almost 2.2 gigawatts. Then what the market does is it receives the forecasts. It performs some feature engineering. It can be the average, standard deviation between all the forecasts. It can be lags, leads. Then we have a model training to combine them. It means that we need to optimize hyperparameters, and then we do the forecast. Here is an example of a day ahead forecasting curve. In our market, forecasters predict quantile 50, quantile 10, and quantile 90. So we have these power point forecast, and then we also have probabilistic forecasts. So between these two dashed lines, there is a probability of 80% of the real wind power can there. We also assess wind power variability. We predict the wind power variability with the goal of detecting wind power ramps, because it's also something critical for Elia. And we use the information. So forecasters just send forecasts for the power, and we convert it in wind power variability and detect also wind power ramps. After that, we see how much important each forecaster is, and we attribute weights in our ensemble according to that. And we also use that to score the the forecasters and distribute the revenue between them. So in terms of graphical interface, just to give you an idea, we have this user-friendly way to see the performance. This is the market maker interface. They can see the ensemble for a historical period or even for tomorrow. They can see the performance of the users. Of course, here they are anonymized, but the market maker can see emails and all the details. And we also have a similar dashboard for forecasters, but with anonymized data. And to give you an idea of this pilot, so we started with a local proof of concept between June and October 2024. Then in the end of November, Elias started to invite external forecasters to join the platform, and the pilot will run until the end of April. Right now, we have more than 25 active forecasters, 120 sessions, so 120 days, because we do day-ahead forecast in each session. And if you want to know more about it, there is this web page where we have all the documentation that you can see. Now moving to some results to show what is going on in this pilot. These results are for January. We can see, so here is an example. The gray curves are some individual forecasters. The black curve is the observed power, and the red is the point forecasting obtained using the ensemble technique. And we see that, for instance, here, if we used individual forecasters, we would probably miss this part, and the ensemble was able to capture more efficiently the real behavior. So the same here. So we see that some forecasters miss this continuous part. Some of them go to this direction, but the ensemble was able to correct these individual trajectories. Here is the top 6 forecasters according to rank for January. So here we see the days 1 to 31 of January. When we see 1, it means that for this specific day, this forecaster had the smaller root mean square error. If we do the average of the ranks per forecaster and also for the ensemble, we see that the ensemble usually is in top position, so it has the best mean rank. The root mean square error is also here. If we do this, so this table sorts by the rank position. If we sort by the root mean square error instead of looking to the rank, we have a different order. So we see that this forecaster has a smaller error, but this is not very realistic, let's say, because what happens is that these forecasters just participated in one session. The error was not incredible, but for the day, but since we are taking the average for the period, it seems smaller than the other ones, but it's not really, because it did not participate in very difficult days to predict. This day 7 was really hard to predict. We have huge errors, so it just participated in this one. If we remove these cases where they didn't submit for at least 25 days, then the ensemble is our best model. And just to finalize this analysis for point forecasting, so to correct this situation where we have forecasters that are not participating for the entire period, if we compare the root mean square error improvement, so if we compare F11, forecaster 11, with the ensemble just for this day, then his performance is not very good. If we do the same for F10, so we compare ensemble with forecaster 10 only for the 13 days where he participated, we have also worse performance. So here is a summary of how much worse the forecasters are when compared to the ensemble. And this is the best forecaster, but even in that case, it was almost 3% worse than the ensemble. So the ensemble shows low variance in rank across different sessions, and it indicates that we have most robust and reliable solution when we consider ensemble instead of some specific forecasters. For probabilistic forecasting, the platform is predicting, as I said, here is 80% interval. So below we have the quantile 10, and then the quantile 90, so 80% interval. The conclusions are very similar. So in terms of rank, ensemble is very robust and reliable. And the same for Winkler score. Winkler score, just to remind, is the size of the interval plus the deviation between the observed and the limit of the interval if the observed is outside the interval. So we see that if we compare in terms of Winkler, and we do the same analysis by removing the forecasters that did not participate in the long period, then we have again ensemble with a very competitive performance. So it seems perfect ensemble. It's a good solution, but we also find many challenges, and these are three key challenges. We have high variability among forecasters. We have some forecasters that are consistently good. They consistently rank in the first positions. But we also have some other forecasters that are very good during 1 week, and then suddenly there is a day where they are really bad. And this is a challenge for the ensemble forecasting models, because the ensemble tries to learn who are the best forecasters and give more weight to them. But then if we have these forecasts very good during 1 week and then it is a disaster, it's really challenging for our forecasting model, ensemble model. We have some submission issues as well. Some forecasters submitted in the wrong scale. Here the scale is megawatt. Some of them submitted in watt. Some of them in gigawatt. So we had some issues with swapped quantiles, invalid formats. And another limitation we had is data history. As I said, for artificial intelligence models, it is important to have good historical data. But since the market is now starting, we don't have ensemble forecasts and forecasts from the forecasters for the past. So we don't have a huge historical data to train the models. And because of that, it is hard to use machine learning models right now. And what we are considering, we evaluated many approaches, and our best ensemble forecasting model right now is a weighted ensemble average. So just to say something about the continuation of this pilot. So we are using it in wind offshore, but we will open a new use case in April, where the goal is to predict the total Belgian solar generation. And in that case, instead of 2.2 gigawatts, we have 12 gigawatts. And accurate solar forecasting is really important for the control room in the summer, because it's a huge quantity. So a 10% deviation is still a lot of energy. And to conclude, so how can AI help achieve European Union energy goals? Just to summarize what was said before. So integrating renewable energy sources is hard, because renewable energy sources depend on factors that humans cannot control. For that reason, inner energy is sometimes wasted, and therefore improving forecast accuracy with artificial intelligence models would reduce such imbalances. And behind better models, we need to motivate companies or individuals to cooperate on the data and knowledge they have to achieve these goals. And just to summarize, just to finalize, this is also aligned with the UN 2030 agenda, specifically with the goal 7, affordable and clean energy, and with the goal 12, responsible consumption and production. So this is the team from Inestec side and also from Elia's side. That's all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla. It was really amazing and perfect presentation. I just wonder if any member of the panel has a very urgent question to you, because it was very comprehensive, very easy to follow. Are there any questions that the first one that I could give immediately? So is there somebody? If not, as I see, I have a more organizational. Who actually started the initiative? It was Elia going to you, or you have already done this and Elia founded you? So really to make this collaboration approach, because EU strengths and weaknesses at the same, we are so diverse, we are so many places. So how did it start?
So before we had a participation in an European project, Smart for Hash, where we developed this concept of data markets to incentivize data sharing in this first case that I presented, where we have spatial distributed data. So we did some work on that project, more academic developments. We did some tests with open source data. We presented it in the final conference of the European project. And one of the members of Elia was there, and he liked the idea. So he contacted us later to know if we could adapt the concept, because we also did a platform, so a prototype for the platform. So we already had the structure, and he contacted us and asked if we could extend the idea for ensemble forecasting, and that's how it all started with Elia.
Thank you. I see Jesse use my invitation. Jesse, please.
Thank you, Andres. I was wondering about wider use cases. We've mentioned already in the presentations the potential for AI in smart buildings, the potential for AI in management of power grids, the potential for AI, I think, also includes, maybe a little close to what you're doing, the insurance sector. And I wondered if you'd had any conversations, because they too face the problem that if you are going to insure, for example, offshore wind, the perfect answer is a 40-year historic data set, which does not exist. So they are having to look at proxy data, and then they are having to find ways to deeply mine that data in order to give themselves foresight. I'm just interested if that's a conversation you've touched upon or heard about. It seems to me a potential interesting area for AI in the green transition. Thank you.
No. So until now, we just worked with this wind power forecasting, not insurance. So but it would be an interesting use case. And even in healthcare, we have some possible applications of these algorithms.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Carla. Luis, now the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Andres. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen now. So I promise to be short in my presentation after this excellent presentation from Carla. So just a couple of comments before starting. So thank you very much for the invitation, first of all. I cannot say that I'm an expert, because I've been in this sector for the past 30 years and I'm still learning about every day. So I think it's really a very challenging sector, this one. And with the advent of AI, it's becoming even more challenging, I would say. I would just like also to comment on a couple of things from the previous Carlos presentation. So one thing is on data and data markets, the monetization of data. I think it's something that I don't like to discuss, but sometimes, from time to time, it comes to the discussion because I really think that running a critical infrastructure like the networks, I think it's really important to get access to all the data that allow us to have a good understanding and operation of the network. So when we speak about monetization, sometimes it gives us the sense that we need to pay to do something that is for the benefit of society. And that is a little bit awkward when it comes to the data issues. I must also stress that we have been working with AI. I mean, my company, also the other DSOs and TSOs across Europe, I guess for the last 10 years, I am not exaggerating if I say it, but there are different types of AI. Indeed, there are what I call traditional AI, mostly based on machine learning. And then we have the generative AI, which is the thing that came with ChatGPT and now is popping up everywhere. And is indeed a geopolitical tool right now. I think that we should also make this difference because I remember well that 6 years ago, I had a conversation with a colleague of mine from the control center. And at that time, I used to have two young data experts and mathematicians working with me just to try to forecast the energy consumption at the primary substation level, which should not be a very difficult thing indeed. But they got more or less the same. They got in the same situation as Carla mentioned. So in certain periods of time, it was very good. In other periods of time, was not so good. And I realized that people from the control centers, they used to say, no, we prefer to have our own AI on our own minds as an intelligence to forecast for tomorrow, because we already know with our own experience what will be more or less what is going to happen tomorrow. This is just to give this the example of the paradox between what we think as humans that we can do and what is already the capacity, the capabilities that are associated with these AI tools. But overcoming this, I think one case that comes from that from me is something that I get from the Carlos presentation is that we need to take care of our grids. And why I'm saying this, because you see that wind and solar generation is a very complex topic. Now imagine what will be the complexity of synchronizing these already complex generation patterns with the ones that are becoming more complex, which are the demand patterns. So it's really a very difficult equation, balancing these two sides, generation and demand, and synchronizing them at the same time. And the grid is only that is there only for that. I mean, the grid is the main role of the grid is not to be I mean, the central of everything, but indeed the facilitator, the point that connects one extreme to the other and make sure that everything is functioning in the right capacity and with the right quality of service. So having said this, I think now I can go to my presentation very shortly and try to give you some use cases that we foresee right now as possible uses of AI and generative AI when it comes to smart grids. And my focus is mostly on smart grids. So looking to the connection to the grids, I would say that one is renewable energy forecasting. Carl already explained a little bit what are the capabilities of AI in this sector. The other one is the other side of the coin, is the demand forecasting and demand prediction. And here, I would say that our experience so far show us that we have good tools, but not very good tools. What I'm saying is that we can forecast reasonably what is going to be the demand for the next day, probably for the next hour, not so good for the next week. But even though I think that will depend a lot on the normal behavior that we will face on the demand side. And it also changes if you look into the very high voltage level, the high voltage level, the medium voltage and low voltage. I think complexity increases when we go down in this top top-down approach that in our hierarchical networks. What is new now, and I think that the thing that we are exploring now is exactly the potential of generative AI. And the potential of generative AI has a lot to do with the creativity, also creating things out of the blue, out of nothing, I would say. So this is where synthetic data comes into play. So with this kind of generative AI, what we can do is to generate multiple scenarios, try to imagine different situations occurring almost in real time. And with that, we can prepare our networks to make sure that they are consistent enough and they adaptable enough to take into consideration these changes at the same time with the renewable generation on one side and with the demand patterns on the other side. And here, I think it's really a game changer, not AI per se, but mostly the generative AI and the things now that are evolving on top of generative AI. And here, I mean, agentic AI, the capacity to have agents that are, their own capability. They are capable of understanding the context and behave in an autonomous way, of course, with human oversight, I would say, but also to help us with these tasks. The next, now, if you focus on the grid itself or the system, now we can imagine a lot of different situations there that could be exploited when it comes to AI and generative AI. So we have planning. I'm not mentioning here planning activities, but I think it's fundamental because one of the goals of planning is indeed to generate scenarios and to see how can we design a cost-effective system that allow us to take into consideration the best possible way the challenges ahead. And with that, this capacity of generating new scenarios, I think we are going to increase also the reliability of the scenario-based approach that we use in our planning activities. The same applies, of course, to network operation and control. I already explained that given this capacity of one side having automation in our networks, sensor spreads across the network, the capacity to provide this data and control in some data centers and also in such a way, in a federated way, also directly in the devices themselves, allow us to, together with the generative AI capability, also to produce new operational scenarios that will be much more effective, I guess, very much more effective than the ones that we have today, of course, in a more complex environment. And the same applies here also to predictive maintenance and asset management, because these days we have already very good methodologies, but still they are very based on time approaches and not so much on the real operational status of the asset. And when I say this, I'm also referring to scenario-based operational circumstances. I think it's really important also to stress test the capacity of our assets and see how they behave and how these stress tests have an impact on the lifetime of the assets. So you see, if we can keep talking about this, we can invite experts from different operational fields, and we will see that we have a lot, immediate of opportunities to improve in the coming months and years when it comes basically to generative AI, but mostly and not only from AI. I already explained this one. And the other side is also the consumer engagement. Here, consumer, I refer to the different facets of consumer. It could be myself as a normal consumer. It can be a so-called prosumer. It can be an energy community. It can be a peer-to-peer trading platform where people just make sure that they trade the surplus of energies. So in the end, what I mean with this is that we need to find ways of synchronizing all these behaviors in such a way, independently of being through a market approach or a regulated approach or a mixed approach, but to find a way of having this kind of grid-friendly behaviors that allow us indeed to reach the final goal, which is to have an affordable energy system that allows for decarbonization. So, I mean, if we tie all these things together, I think it's not very complicated indeed. It's a complicated world, but not so complicated as that. So indeed, we are doing a lot in my company also to ensure that we are moving these physical relations that we have on a daily basis with consumers mostly to the digital platforms. And for sure, we all know that it's not only something coming from the energy sector, but also coming from other sectors. AI has indeed a lot of potential to automate and to support and to streamline mostly this kind of interactions. And here, when it comes to streamlining, I think it's really a huge advantage, because with this we can improve very much the processes when it comes to new connections and when it comes to concerns, also to queries and things like this. I think it's really important to have this kind of tools. Now, concrete examples from my company. So I think this is just the starting point, as I mentioned. So this is mostly coming from the past, is not yet incorporated to the full extent and to the full capacity, the generative AI issue, but still we have good examples. So one was indeed the collaboration between us and Vinashpec. I think again you see that Vinashpec is really a very good player. Is playing not only with Elia, but also with several different DSOs and TSOs across Europe, despite being a Portuguese organization. So we have a long track history of cooperation with Nashtec, and here I just mentioned one smart alarm management system that we managed to develop together with them, and this is really improving our capacity to deal with the amount of information that we receive on a minute base, not on a daily base, on a minute base at control center level. So this is really a lot of information that is always coming from the sensors in the network, and we need to digest all this information and to make it actionable. So this is one of the examples. Another one is something that for us is particularly relevant to manage the vegetation, so that we can we avoid problems with the lines. And in the case of Portugal, we have something between 70 and 80% of overhead lines. So it's quite significant. And with this AI capabilities, I mean, the machines are able to digest all the information coming from the photos that the drones are taking, but also satellite images, and also translate all this information into something that is actionable, and of course fine-tuning and directioning our actions to the ones that really need to be taken. And with this, I think we have already achieved very important quantitative benefits. We have also another project, a very interesting one, that is combining AI, IoT, and also big data and edge computing to make sure that we are monitoring our network in real time and take decisions in almost in real time. Again, we are, in my opinion, honestly speaking, I think I know a lot of examples also coming from other DSOs. Now, today, I didn't ask permission to the other colleagues. Of course, I'm presenting the Portuguese ones. But I think all DSOs and TSOs are working on this. We have very good examples that we can share, and we are already listing them for work that we are doing at this moment in time. But in my opinion, is that we are very early in this process phase. So I think also just to have more examples of drone-based inspections and digital twins based on open source foundational models. And allow me to say this because this is a really important point for me, at least for me. It comes back to the discussion that was raised by Carla on the data, the access to data. I think that when it comes to this critical infrastructure, we should look more for open source models than to something that is closed and that avoids us and try to avoid vendor lock-in. And it's not only vendor lock-in; it's because if we avoid vendor lock-in, we are going to scale up the industrial capacity of Europe. We are going to bring down the costs of the system, and it's going to really be a win-win situation. But it's more than this. I mean, we have the right, and we also have the mandate to make sure that the data is available to ones that should use the data. And in this case, I just refer that in my company, we have this open data portal, and we have been increasing the data sets almost on a monthly basis. And this is crucial so that we can also provide our own guidelines to the ones that use the network. So just to give an example, one of the things that we provide in the open portal is data about the best locations right now where we can connect an EV charger. This is quite important because now we are facing everywhere across Europe the capacity constraints. So, luckily in Portugal, we are not in the worst situation, namely compared with the Netherlands. but still, I think we need to act in advance. And this kind of open collaboration, it's fundamental, in my opinion, to make sure that Europe has a competitive advantage when it comes to these solutions. And I'm referring here because I think, at least relying on external information, and I remember that there was a report from the International Energy Agency from the end of last year when they have a ranking of patents when it comes to smart grids. And I think Europe is in a good position. I'm not sure if it is the best one across the globe, but it's a very good position. But again, I think it also is an interesting discussion. I'm sorry for bringing this also to this webinar. But one thing is to measure the capacity to innovate, another thing is to measure the capacity to implement. And I think we are very good sometimes at innovating, but not so good as when it comes to implementation. So normally I say as a provocation that innovation without implementation is useless. And okay, I'm just provoking now, but what I'm trying to convey now, the message is that if possible, let's work on open source solutions, because this is really, in my opinion, one of the best ways to go forward. Now, when it comes to, and allow me just to finalize a little bit my intervention, allow me to speak a little bit about challenges and opportunities. So this is very common sense, I would say, but at the same time, I think it's important to devote some time to discuss this. One thing is the skilled workforce needs. It's not about upskilling or reskilling. It's really a problem that we have now. So it's an economic situation, even if you go to a country level. What is the driver for a young guy that just finished the university or a technical course to go working with a DSO or a PSO when they can earn the same amount of money going to a hotel or a restaurant or something like that, which is less risky than going to work with electricity, because in the end, electricity is a little bit risky, I would say. So indeed, we have to think a little bit about this workforce needs, and also to make sure that they are skilled enough to work with these new tools that we need to embrace. Another challenge that I deem to be very important is also cybersecurity. I would say even more than this, cyber physical security. And this is a two faces of the same coin. So on one side, I think AI, and mostly generative AI, will allow us to be more efficient and more ready to deal with the cyber risks when they appear, or cyber initiatives, something like that. But at the same time, it also increases the potential of those threats, meaning that it's difficult to find out where the trade-off is. So I think it's again the chicken and egg problem, and we will go around that, but it's really important one. Another one is that I already referred to is data silos. I think we should avoid everything that has to do with silos when it comes to data. Of course, we need to respect GDPR. We need to respect the right for the ones that are generating data to also to have a business on that. But we need also to establish a trade-off between the operation of the critical infrastructures and also the other businesses that rely on data but are not for the critical operation. Then this issue that it was in the news, 3 months ago, with these small nuclear reactors that the Americans would like to build just to make sure that they supply and they fed their data centers with enough energy. So we should also try to understand here if you want to have a concentrated approach where we have all the information in this data center, or if we have a kind of mixed approach where we have these data centers and also at the same time some kind of federated and distributed capacity also to drive our systems. And then finally, it's always the same story in the end, but we need to invest. Okay, and the point here is that on one side we have a legacy burden, which we have a lot of systems and a lot of things that are already there, and even if we discover the silver bullet and we suddenly have the best AI approaches for everything, we are not going there and replace all the cables and transformers and all the systems just because we have that tool at hand. So it will cost money, it will take time, and it's important also to debate this. And of course, I think we need to acknowledge that there are a lot of upfront costs if we want to have to really exploit the potential of these AI slash Gen AI issues. Finally, just to end my presentation, So I didn't mention, but right now we are producing in EthicSnet, we are producing what we call a strategic position paper on AI and generative AI for smart grids. We started late November, and we are going to publish the paper on the 4th of April. I mean, in 2 weeks' time. And this paper spans from policy to regulation to use cases, technology, a roadmap, and recommendation. So it's quite a hard job. It will be, it will have a lot of faults. I acknowledge because we are only starting these discussions, but we already did some relevant things, in my opinion. One is that we had a survey with more than 100 people participating in the survey, and the idea of these surveys is to really get the feeling of what the stakeholders think about this AI and generative AI in smart grids. And we got some interesting results. So one is on ethics by design. So I think this has a lot to do with this AI Act and this concern that we have. Are we struggling with innovation? Are we putting a lot of stress on top of that because of our way of behaving as Europeans? And this is the good discussion also to have. Another one is on regulatory sandboxes. Some people are a little bit afraid that this controlled innovation environment might become lab versus reality. That might create a gap between the laboratory analysis and the reality that we have to face out there. The other point is what they call the hybrid AI infrastructure. And the point here is really a geopolitical discussion. This is something that Europe must decide. The point is, should we go for our own solutions? Should we have partnerships and have some that are critical, that are based in Europe, and others that are not so critical, that we can rely on the Chinese and on the Americans and on the Australians, on the South Africans, whatever it is. And finally, I think most of the people acknowledge that when it comes to skills and these kind of things, we need to have this university industry partnership to close these skill gaps. And I think this is really important. So we run, if I'm not mistaken, 50 questions on different topics, and we already have some food for thought for the next months. I would like also to, if you allow me, just to. I don't want to moderate the next discussion, but I have some questions that I would like to address. Of course, there are a lot, but I don't want you to address all of them. But I see some points that, in my opinion, are critical. So one is this trust crisis. I mean, this AA Act is it's very nice. I think Europe is leading the way there, but at the same time, it's not easily understandable. I mean, it's not easy to read between the lines. And when it comes to explainable AI, I think one of the concerns that might appear here is that what is the right level of explainability that we should consider to make sure that citizens understand what are the decisions that we need to take when running the grids. And here I'm also pointing towards scarcity, because we are living in a world of abundance. I mean, nowadays you just plug your appliance to the electricity infrastructure and everything works fine. But I fear that in a period of time we might face some scarcity problems when it's not possible to synchronize generation with demand. So I think we need to explain when we take the decision of shutting down something, we need to explain to the ones that pay for the system why are we doing that and what was the rationale behind that. So I think this is what I call a trust crisis. The other one is the green AI paradox. So we are building gigantic data centers. This will demand for a lot of energy. Yes, I'm going to end. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to end, and so on and so forth. So the next step will be the grid democracy, ethics, and finally, probably the most important one for today's discussion, in my opinion, is this trade-off between speed and safety. So I leave you with the questions. I have the questions here, some results of the survey, and I'm done with it. Thank you very much for your time and for your patience.
Thank you, Luis. It was excellent presentation, very rich, and then immediately pass to Christopher because it's he's now he has a real challenge really to lead the debate.
And thank you, Luis, for doing my job for me with your brilliant questions, if I may say so. Okay, So we've got 25 minutes on an issue we could spend 2.5 hours easily. Okay, so let me ask each of the panelists a fairly general question so you can go where you want to. And that is, I was reading the Clean Industrial Deal and Affordable Energy Act in the light of this seminar last night. And the following thought came to me, which is the Commission's identified some real challenges for the EU. That our electricity cost is double that of the US and China, that our grids are in a vicious circle in many member states, which, in Germany, Spain, and the Netherlands, which have 6% renewables, they're into this vicious circle where there's increasing congestion. So there's increasing hours where there's negative prices on the grids, which gives increasing curtailment costs, 3 billion in Germany now, which means with the negative prices for more and more hours, member states find it difficult to launch new tenders for CFDs. In Spain, if you do a 5 gigawatt tender for CFDs for wind today, half of it's going to be curtailed, which means industry don't bid for PPAs for the fear of risking out of negative load prices. So the whole Green Deal stalls, and electricity prices actually net, including subsidies and grid costs and all the rest, go up, not down. That electrification is not speeding up at the speed we have, and the industrial decarbonisation is hitting serious cost and availability issues. So there's some real issues that we're facing. But I think the Clean Industrial Deal reflects there's no easy solutions on this, because you go through it and think, well, it's evolution rather than revolution. The Commission should do more. And then you ask yourself the question, well, what should he do? And the answer is, well, I don't really know. And so it's a tricky one. So the question that I have for you is, what can AI do in order to help Europe through this Clean Deal existential crisis? And what should the EU do to harness this potential? So, for example, should we have a grid code? But I leave the floor entirely to you for more or less 5 minutes each to go exactly where you would like to go on this. So, as always, I'd like to start with the Commission. Nice to see you, Vincent. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chris, and that's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you for your question. I think you asked the right question, and I think Luis as well in his intervention asked a quite relevant question. I think for us, digitization and AI are two important priorities. I think we've got an energy system that is changing rapidly. Energy supply is becoming more and more decarbonized, electrified, decentralized. Last year we had renewable energies generating nearly half of our electricity. I think this is a record. And these changes have accelerated since the war in Ukraine, and they will further accelerate with the Clean Industrial Deal and the Affordable Energy Action Plan. Because both, as you said, are putting a lot of importance in increasing the electrification of our energy system. They also insist on promoting the uptake of renewable energies. And these changes mean that we need to expand our grids. I agree with you, Chris. There's an issue with the grids in Europe, but we also need to provide more flexibility. And I think there's no flexibility without digital solutions, including AI. And as a matter of fact, digital solutions are everywhere already, from control rooms to smart meters or smart appliances. We've got AI-based solutions that can be found in many places. Luis said he's been working with AI for 10 years now. We counted more than 50 use cases in Europe of cases where AI is being used to make our energy system more competitive, secure, and also more sustainable. And these applications are numerous. grid planning, forecasting of generation and demand response, energy efficiency measures, predictive maintenance, and many other applications. And I don't want to develop them because I think the previous speakers offered quite a comprehensive overview already. What I would like to say, though, is that there's no time for complacency, as I think there's a large scope for further digitizing the energy system, and that's what Europe should be focusing on. I think if you look at the rollout of smart meters, this is lagging behind. We still see, and I think it was quite clear from the presentation of Luis, there's still a large untapped potential for AI solutions. But we know that there are a number of barriers, and I think we should overcome them. That includes the lack of interoperability, the lack of investments, the lack of skills, as well as the inherent risks induced by digitization. And that's why in 2022, the European Commission adopted an action plan for the digitization of the energy system. And that has enabled us to, first of all, facilitate the seamless exchange of data along the whole energy value chain, moving towards a common European energy data space. And that data space is essential. I think I heard in a conference not long ago someone saying data are the fuel of AI, and we need to foster the access and exchange of energy related data in Europe. That's one priority. I think our action plan has also helped us promote investments in digitizing the electricity grid, notably through the definition of smart grids indicators and the development of a digital twin of the electricity grid in Europe. That's something we're working on. I mean, we launched a very big projects to do just that. And we're working with many stakeholders in Europe now to create the digital twin, which will be used as well to see how AI can be exploited for the benefit of the energy system. Our priority has also been to develop tools to further engage consumers in the energy transition and to raise the digital skills of market actors. I think that's one point Luis mentioned, which is quite important. We need more energy market players with digital skills in order to use AI. And we also had measures in our action plan to facilitate a more coordinated approach between member states. At the same time, we should look at the challenges, of course, that are induced by digitization, cybersecurity, of course, the reduction of carbon footprint of digital technologies, data centers in particular. I think that's where Europe should also act. Does it mean we're all done yet? Now, I think certainly not. I think we see those technologies evolving very fast. I mean, generative AI presents new opportunity. We believe that more should be done to unlock the potential of digital solutions in the energy sector. And that's why we're preparing now a strategic roadmap for digitization and AI in the energy sector. That's one of the priorities of our new commissioner. And alongside this roadmap, we were also supporting an electrification strategy, as well as measures to reinforce, modernize, digitalize the electricity grids. And so that's how we are tackling this issue. We see a lot of benefit, a lot of opportunities, some challenges we need to address, and a lot has been done, but more needs to be done, and that will be the subject of that strategic roadmap. Thank you.
Many thanks indeed. Francois, ESA should be all over this like a coat of paint. Surely we're going to get obligatory guidelines on your members. How are we going to harness this from your perspective?
Thank you for this question. I think a lot has been said already. I'll try to complement a bit, maybe taking some of Luis' questions also along the way. As the Commission just mentioned, we have a challenge in terms of decarbonisation and grid access for data centers, especially if the electricity consumption from data centers increases dramatically by 2030. How are we going to manage that? Let me give you an example. Recently in Norway, an ammunition factory considered expanding production, and it is competing for electricity with data centers for a video app. So the consequence for us is, do we need to review grid access requests? And what should be the criteria in this respect? Because probably what we see in a number of member states is that first come, first serve is not really appropriate any longer. But it is also difficult to say what should be the alternative. The second question I would take from Luis is the question of trust. It is one thing to get an AI algorithm to give you a kind of bad video recommendation. It is a totally different thing for AI to create massive fast movements in electricity trading that may lead eventually to a real-time blackout. How are we going to regulate that? Do we need to have predefined rules for that? Or do we need to have some kind of ex post audits of behavior? And how much explainability do we want to have? If AI brings in a bid, is it abuse of market power, or is it AI really finding a sweet spot in terms of market functioning? And that leads me to my third point, which is I've heard we need to have 70% of enterprises to use AI and big data. I also believe we need public authorities, we need regulated entities to use AI more and to define a framework for them to be more efficient based on AI. And for example, looking at the regulatory community, there are many ways in which AI could help us. We have, for example, access to very detailed trading data, party-to-party trading, volumes, prices. AI could bring massive value in investigating what is going on and maybe finding abuse of market power or ideas of reforms to improve market functioning. But then what should be the conditions for using that in practice? We've discussed cybersecurity. Are we allowed to push in detailed trading data into AI algorithm? Should we have locational requirements? Are we allowed to use any kind of worldwide technology for that? So this will really be a question. And I would also push the question that we really need to digitalize TSOs and DSOs faster. We see some initiatives going on, but they need to be much bigger because we need to moderate network costs. Otherwise, they may double by 2050 per unit consumed. And I'll close with a wider reflection, which is what I mentioned can be already ambitious, but there are more incremental changes within the functioning we see today. There may be a possibility that we will completely change the paradigm for the energy sector based on AI. And in that case, we will really need to monitor how technology evolves and behaviors evolve so that we can capture that and adapt to that along the way. Thank you. Back to you.
Thanks, Francois. You raise a very interesting question. I to my surprise, I discovered a couple of days ago that a couple of major utilities in the EU, who you think are basically power generators, actually make more money from trading than they do from actually producing and selling power. And you've raised the idea, okay, in the future, perhaps all of us can be energy traders just by harnessing an AI algorithm. And if all our algorithms work effectively and manipulate the market, which is an effective way to trade if you're an algorithm, then we're in a completely different space, aren't we? So do we need to rewrite REMIT in order to take account of this?
It is a difficult question, and I think we don't really know today, to be honest. And there are some high-level overarching principles in REMIT that are likely to remain valid because they're generic enough. There are questions whether we need to rewrite some of them. What I would see also beyond REMIT is a question of emergent behavior that will be very difficult for us to address. When you can decide how one algorithm will behave, but then when you have 10,000, a million of them interacting together, possibly with unknown principles, are you sure you won't create weird behaviors that come from this overall community? And how are you going to define, say, individual requirements so that this kind of constellation of individual algorithm work well together? This is going to be a big issue, I expect, going forward.
Many things. Jesse, the floor is yours.
Chris, thank you. A short answer to your question and then a couple of broader points. I think there's a space for AI to help us a lot with one aspect of the simplification agenda that's behind the Clean Industrial Deal. And this is, there is no net zero transition without a lot of monitoring, reporting, and verification, not just of emissions throughout the circular economy value chains. MRV is burdensome. And rather than simplification, are there ways that we can not just automate, but also harness AI, essentially to produce ease of use for that essential MRV process that's part of the green transition? And there are people working in technical areas of this, but the broad question, I think, is not getting enough policy attention. Two other points. My former colleagues at the IEA will bring out on the 10th of April a report on energy and AI, which has a number of interesting findings. This is both about the energy load implications of AI, but also about the AI applications in the energy sector. One observation I took away from some of the preparatory workshops around that report is that there is an appetite from many of the AI developers to test their models on anything available. Data is the food, including the energy sector. It may not be, however, that in all areas of energy, there is actually a win from applying AI compared to other forms of massive computation. And we need to think quite hard, given the energy appetite, the energy consumption of AI, about the really useful use cases. A lot of those, again, take us somewhat in the MRV direction. For example, waste sorting in order to do clean waste to energy, scrap steel sorting in order to do EAF green steel processes. These are very complex processes where some aspects of AI can help us enormously in the managing, tracing, the separation, and the quality control that are essential to those outcomes. Last general comment, I'm sitting in Delhi today, and of course there are EU-India trade talks on now. They've been going for a while, but there is a new momentum and a strong appetite for a deal by the end of the year. Listening to both the European and the Indian sides here, it's very clear that the Indians wish to put AI, digital public infrastructure, and a number of topics in this field firmly on the table as an early part of the deal. The Europeans are very keen on investment governance, and both sides have a strong appetite for cooperation in clean tech, clean energy. Let's think hard about where we can find areas for collaboration in what is in total a population of 2 billion people and a 24 trillion economy, the largest economy in the global north, the largest country in the global south. If there are ways forward aligned with the green transition between those two entities, then we have, frankly, a world template. And it's very clear from the Indian side that AI is part of that package. So I think I'll stop there and hand back because I know time is short. Thanks.
Many thanks indeed, Bessie. And so I turn to Jorge.
Thanks, Chris. And I know that we are short of time, but I cannot resist commenting on your wise remark about trading. And what astonishes me is not that these figures are now public. What I wonder is why people do not act. And it is apparent, at least since the 2021-22, and it should be clear to everybody that this is a self-referential activity. You are making money with money. We are completely disconnected from the physical realities and from the communities and the energy use. And then at the same time, we complain about the high electricity prices and the high gas prices in Europe. I don't understand how you want to keep this present system, this present market model with these self-referential trading activities at the center, and at the same time get competitive low energy prices in Europe. But it's just a reflection on prices. On AI, I'm afraid that I'm just going to repeat what has already been said, but maybe I will be more emphatic and very short. So let's be very clear. AI, from my perspective, has and will have a very important role to play in energy systems. But we should not look at, we should not see AI as the next big thing, as the silver bullet that will make the energy transition quick and cheap. We need to see AI in context. And here are my two suggestions. First is to put AI in the context of energy digitalization. the success of the application of AI to energy systems, of course, will depend on the capabilities of AI, of the AI tools. But it will depend much more on the consistency of the overall energy digitalization strategy. And I am sorry, Vincent, but at the moment, there is no consistent EU energy digitalization strategy. What we see is a completely nonsensical fragmentation of standards, of policies, of procedures, and this is a waste of resources, and this is a self-inflicted harm. If I have to choose, if I was a decision maker and I had to choose, frankly, between making the EU the world leader in AI applications or making the EU the world leader in energy digitalization, I would choose the latter without any hesitation, because it's much more important. AI is just a piece of a much broader, much larger business. My second suggestion is to carefully, and this has already been mentioned by Carl and Luis, and I'm very glad that they did that, to carefully assess the limitations of AI. Because as any technical object or as any scientific theory, AI has its own inherent limitations. And ignoring these limitations leads to unrealistic expectations. We have seen this with hydrogen 3 or 4 years ago. That was the fashion at that time. We have seen this with other fashions that then did not materialize. And they costed in the meantime a lot of money to the taxpayers. And my final remark is that it's important to remember that information is not the same as knowledge, and this simple truth is too often forgotten. And if we have time, I would like to elaborate on the example of Google. Some of you may remember that 15 years ago, Google launched the power meter, the Google power meter, which was discontinued just 2 years afterwards, 2 years later. And it would be interesting to analyze that case. This is not AI. I mean, this is a very simple application, of course, but the reasons for that failure may also explain the failure of many applications of AI, and maybe it is a useful exercise to revisit that case. Thank you.
I found this a really terrific series of presentations and debates, and I've learned a lot. So thank you very much indeed, all the panelists, and I'll pass to Andres for the close.
Yeah, well, I would really thank you for this participation. I think you raised a lot of important issues. There have been a lot of practical examples and a lot of also important considerations for the future to go. I wish for Vincent and Francois really to capitalize what was said really to in your work, because you are definitely critical how things will be steered, and we continue really to get engaged in this AI issue. I am still very puzzled of the whole thing and the whole impact. And George said, yeah, there have been these hypes, but AI, for my understanding, is different type of hype. So it is not so much induced by our willingness or political consideration. It just drives. And then we are following it. And the idea was that at least in energy sector, we are trying really to steer it in a profitable way, but there are other issues also that are very much related. So thank you very much. We will try to organize some other webinars on this particular topic, taking from today's debate some questions that could we get more in depth. And also I would like to thank all the participants who listened to us and will continue to listen, and Tomiris for organizing and helping to prepare the debates. Thank you and have a nice day.